It just says what the government did to help. It doesn't mention the government failed to help. It doesn't mention the government did more harm than help. It doesn't mention the fact that the government illegalized gold. Did you know it became illegal to own gold on pain of a fine of $10,000 if you were an individual, I believe, possessing gold, or was that a company in possession of gold bullion would be charged $10,000? Maybe that was. That's in Salzman's course. He mentions that. But you can get information on the illegalization of gold anywhere. It was actually illegalized. People were ordered to turn their gold in and use paper currency. Paper currency was given to them for their gold, and the gold was then sent to Washington, put in the Federal Reserve, and all this while is the government seizing gold, arresting people who are possessing it illegally. All this time, they're talking about the restrictions in the money supply. They're saying people need to spend more money. People need to consume more. People need to do something to start this economy going. Banks need to borrow out money. People need to be borrowing money and trying things. People need to be consuming things, purchasing goods. They couldn't figure out what's going on. And they're trying to one of the ways they're trying to solve the problem is by taking gold out of the economy, taking one of the, it had been an economic mainstay for a while now, hadn't it? Forever now. But it had been illegalized, taken, Britain had gone off the gold standard. Here America decides to go off the gold standard. Now, it looked a lot like fascism in the 30s. A lot of people saw fascism in Italy, in Germany, in Japan, and in other sundry locations. And they said, is it coming to America? So it wasn't a good business investment era. The 20s was very pro-business. Some more statistics from Mr. Salzman, this time on taxes. In 1924, the top rate was 46%. Now that had been cut quite a bit by Calvin Coolidge, I believe, who said America's business ought to be business. So in 1924 it was 46%, cut from quite a bit higher, 65 or 70 or something. And in 1925 they cut it from 46 down to 25%. Corporate taxes in the 1920s were cut from 13.5 to 11%. The 20s was a very business-friendly era. The 30s was not. During the 30s, the government illegalized gold. 1/3 of all banks in the nation went broke. The taxes were raised again and again and again ruinously. Government spending took massive amounts of money out of the economy when the economy needed money very badly. All they can do here is just say, here's the wonderful things the government did. Easing credit, encouraging cooperatives, great, get everybody into a collective farm. 3, limiting production. Here's the one. This is crazy. The Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933 sought to raise farm prices by cutting production. Now, if you can double the price of corn and produce half as much, where have you gotten? But maybe they'll just cut production by 20% and the price will go up by 40%, and they'll create wealth by destroying. That would be magical. So, farmers were paid by the government for withdrawing from cultivation acreage used for growing corn, wheat, cotton, and other staples. So here we are in the midst of a depression. Some people don't have food, some people don't have clothing, they have to go to soup kitchens or whatever, there's no jobs available. And the government says if we produce less, so that there's less to go around, so everybody doesn't have as much, maybe we'll be better off. It's effing brilliant. After the Supreme Court declared important sections of the Act unconstitutional, Congress in 1936 passed the Soil Conservation and Domestic Allotment Act. This law aimed to achieve the purpose of the Agricultural Adjustment Act by offering benefit payments to farmers reduced their acreage of soil-depleting staple crops and instead planted soil-enriching grasses and plants such as clover, alfalfa, and soybeans. So how much good did the government do there? They ultimately have to offer them benefit payments to make it constitutional to try to persuade farmers to plant in these other things. Pouring a bunch of money into the economy to get less effective, less efficient, less useful crops grown by agriculture. And this was one of the ways they thought they'd stop the Great Depression. Number 4, storing surpluses and maintaining price levels. The Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938 authorized the Secretary of Agriculture to A. estimate the amount of each major crop that would be needed to satisfy domestic and foreign demand. Sounds like what they were doing in Russia. Have some czar of the economy say, well, this year we need 42 million tons of corn. Right. B. Limit the number of acres that each grower could use to raise these crops, right, because once we decide how much we need, we'll go out and tell people how much to produce. C. Restrict the quantity offered for sale if large surpluses resulted despite acreage controls. So if the suckers still overproduce, we just won't let them put very much on the market. Commodity loans would be extended to farmers on their surplus crops through the Commodity Credit Corporation. These surplus crops would be stored in government warehouses until they could be sold at better prices during years of poor harvest. We'll only let so much on the market, anything extra we'll put in a warehouse. If, in spite of these measures, farm prices did not provide farmers the purchasing power they had before World War I, the government would make up the difference through subsidies called parity payments. Are you getting a feel for the size of government in the situation? 5. They promoted farm ownership. The Farm Tenant Act of 1937, presently administered by the Farmers' Home Administration, provided A. Low-cost long-term loans to farm tenants, farm laborers, and sharecroppers for the purchase of land. B. Financial aid to help these new farm owners buy needed supplies and machinery. This program enabled thousands of landless Americans to acquire farms of their own. Now that's interesting that they just take that for granted. That's a good thing. What good is it to own the farm when commodity prices are so low you can't make a go of it? Why not let the farms be taken over by corporations that can squeeze the last drop of efficiency out of the land? You know, that can get the latest and best machinery and labor-saving devices. Well, that's an interesting point that you bring up there, labor-saving devices, because they were actually punished for mechanization because we're overproducing. We already got too much. So people who wanted to get tractors and stuff when they were using mules or whatever, or wanted to get the new machinery instead of the old-fashioned way of doing it by hand, updating, mechanizing, increasing efficiency, reducing waste, saving money in the Great Depression was frowned on. Reducing waste, saving money was frowned on and implemented, enforced by government